The sun hung low over the dusty plains, its orange light spilling over the rolling hills like molten gold. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush and the faint smoke from distant campfires, painting the landscape with a sense of quiet solitude. John Marston had always been a man of routine, a rancher who knew the language of horses and the whisper of cattle. But that afternoon, the serenity he had always taken for granted vanished like smoke in the wind. His life was about to take a turn he could never have imagined. It had started innocently enough, a simple trade mission to a nearby settlement. Yet as John rode along the narrow trail bordered by jagged cliffs, a sudden ambush tore him from the rhythm of his life. He had underestimated the stealth of the Apache warriors who had been watching, waiting. The sharp whistle of arrows cut through the air, and his horse bolted, carrying him toward a fate he could not escape. In the chaos, John felt the sting of an arrow graze his shoulder. Pain flared, but it was nothing, compared to the fear that gripped his heart as rough hands pulled him down from his mount and bound him with ropes that bit into his skin. He was blindfolded, marched through a labyrinth of forest paths, the sounds of the outside world fading into a strange, silent tension. The Apache village lay hidden in a secluded canyon, surrounded by cliffs that rose like protective walls. Here John became a prisoner, a stranger in a land of customs he did not understand, among people whose eyes seemed to pierce through him, reading his every thought. Fear was his constant companion. Every word he spoke was measured, every movement cautious. Days turned into weeks. John's hands, once calloused from laboring on his ranch, now bore the marks of captivity. Yet something unexpected began to take root within him. The Apache were not the mindless savages of frontier rumors. They were people with deep traditions, loyalty to their families, and courage that rivaled any man's he had ever known. Among them, John observed the rhythmic pulse of life, children laughing, elders teaching, hunters returning with the fruits of the land. Slowly, he began to understand their world, even as he longed for the freedom of the plains he had lost. It was Ayana who first saw the glimmer of something beyond fear in him. She was the daughter of the tribal chief, her eyes sharp yet kind, carrying the weight of responsibility even in her youth. She watched John stumble through the lessons of survival in the tribe, learning to fish from the riverbanks, to track deer in the silent forests, to respect the delicate balance of nature that sustained them. At first, John resisted, thinking of escape, thinking of the life he had left behind. But each lesson, each shared smile, each story told by the firelight, chipped away at the walls he had built around his heart. The turning point came during the first winter. Snow blanketed the canyon, and the cold was merciless. John, unused to the harsh climate, struggled to keep his spirits alive. One night, while huddled near a fire, a young hunter fell from the cliffs above during a hunting expedition. Without hesitation, John braved the icy wind and treacherous path to save him. Ignoring the protests of the villagers who had doubted him, the boy survived, and with that act, John's place among the tribe began to shift. No longer merely a captive, he became someone whose courage and skill earned respect. Ayana began to speak to him more often. Their conversation started with cautious curiosity, questions about his homeland, about the ranches and rivers, about horses that ran freer than any in the canyon. John, in turn, learned about the tribe's rituals, their songs that spoke of ancestors, of battles, of the spirit that bound them to the land. Each conversation became a thread, weaving him into the fabric of their lives, a tapestry of understanding and subtle admiration. Months passed, and John's longing for freedom never fully vanished, but it transformed. He no longer dreamed of escape. He dreamed of belonging. He helped fortify the village, hunted alongside the young warriors, and even participated in council meetings. The chief, once wary of him, began to see John as more than a prisoner, perhaps a man who could bridge two worlds, a man whose heart had proven itself steadfast. Yet not all accepted him. Some whispered behind closed hands, doubting his intentions, warning of betrayal, of the danger of letting an outsider into the heart of the tribe. John knew that trust was fragile. One wrong step could undo months of careful integration, returning him to the chains of fear and isolation. And still he persisted, guided by a quiet determination to prove that courage, honor and loyalty were universal. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs and the sky blazed with crimson and violet, Ayana approached John with a look that blended concern and warmth. "You have changed," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of truth and unspoken questions. John felt the truth of it resonate within him. He had changed. The boy who had been captured and fearful was gone, replaced by a man who had found strength in adversity, who had learned the rhythms of a people whose world had seemed alien. Now almost like home, their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, something unspoken passed between them, a bond forged not by chains or obligation, but by shared experience, by trust earned and respect nurtured. John realized that he had not only survived, he had become a part of something greater, a man capable of love, of honor, of belonging. As the fire crackled, the tribe gathered for a ceremony of the winter solstice. John, once an outsider, was invited to participate, a symbol of his journey from captive to accepted member. The drums echoed through the canyon, the voices rose in song, and for the first time, John felt the pulse of the land not just under his feet, but within his heart. The chapter ends with John standing at the edge of the firelight, Ayana beside him, watching the sky filled with stars. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, loyalty, love, and courage tested at every turn, but he also knew that this was only the beginning. His journey from captive to beloved was unfolding, and the world beyond the canyon could wait. The morning sun sliced through the canyon, painting everything in gold and shadow. John's hands clenched as distant war drums echoed. A rival Apache band approached, intent on testing the tribe's strength. The village stirred. Women guided children to safety. Hunters readied their bows, and the elders muttered prayers to the spirits. John felt the surge of both fear and resolve. He had been a captive once, but now he would fight not just for survival, but for the people who had accepted him. Arrows whistled past as John sprinted alongside the warriors. He had learned their strategies, their silent signals, the rhythm of their movements through rugged terrain. Every instinct he had honed on the ranch, the aim, the timing, the patience, now fused with the tribe's agile tactics. He blocked, dodged, and struck, his heart pounding with a strange exhilaration. This was a battlefield of trust, courage, and unity. Ayana appeared beside him, bow drawn, her eyes fierce yet unwavering. Together they moved as one, weaving between enemy strikes, protecting the weaker members of the tribe. John realized then that love and loyalty were not passive. They were forged in fire, in moments when fear collided with determination. The enemy faltered as John led a clever trap, using cliffs and smoke to confuse them. One by one they retreated, leaving the village victorious. As silence fell, John's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what had been achieved. The tribe gathered, their eyes filled with respect, and for the first time he understood. He was no longer a captive, no longer merely an outsider. He was a protector, a bridge between worlds, a man whose courage had earned a place in hearts that had once doubted him. Ayana touched his shoulder, her gaze softening. "You belong here," she whispered. And for the first time, John truly believed it.